Hey, what's happening? This is Brian Prey, and I just wanted to thank you. If you're one of the people who have been coming by and listening to the podcast series that I started, my podcast isn't even 3 months old yet, and I'm getting just a tremendous amount of feedback from it. So if you are one of the people who've been stopping by and have been listening, I wanted to say thank you. Right now we're hitting about 2,000 downloads a day, and not in my wildest dreams did I ever think in less than 3 months I'd be having 2,000 downloads a day of my podcasts. I'm not even putting stuff out that frequently anymore. I was in the beginning I was putting stuff out almost daily. Now I'm down to about once a week. I found that to be a pretty nice pace to get some of the information out. Of course, I like to send things out a little bit more frequently if I've got important stuff to say, but I wanted to say thank you. So if you're one of the people who've been checking it out, thank you sincerely from the bottom of my heart. If you haven't, please do check it out. You can get them on my blog, which is brianprey.com, straight on my podcast site, which is allyouwantinlife.com, or you can even listen straight in Facebook on my page in Facebook, which is facebook.com/allyouwantinlife. So again, thank you very much. One of the things that I wanted to do, though, is I wanted to bring back more video again, because I know not everybody is just into audio or just into podcasts. So I wanted to bring a lot of this content back to video as well. So it's a beautiful day today. Unlike a lot of my videos, I didn't head down to the beach. I'm coming live from my backyard this afternoon, and I just wanted to share with you something that, it's something that a lot of people will skate around. A lot of people will tell you that there's no secret to success. And I'm going to tell you, when it comes to the practical application of operating a business or doing something, there isn't a secret. They're absolutely right when they say that. However, with that being said, there absolutely is a secret to success, and I'm going to share that with you now. You ready for it? It's happiness. It's happiness. You believe that? Being happy is actually going to determine the level of success that you can have in your life. Now, if you're like me, I was miserable for years. For years. Oh, half of my life I spent being miserable. And it's not a fun place to be. It really isn't. And mind you, I had the happiest days of my life. I mean, during that 20-year period or so of unhappiness, I had those happy moments. My wife and I got married. We had our 3 kids, and by far those are the happiest moments of my life. But collectively, I was pretty miserable. Right? I was doing something that I didn't like doing. I was waking up. Waking up every day was a struggle. It really was. It was very difficult to get up out of bed Monday through Friday. In fact, I use the term, I was wishing my life away for a lot of it, because Monday through Thursday, all I could think about was Friday afternoon. Friday afternoon would come, and yeah, you know what? I'd be a little bit happy, and I'd be happy until probably about dinner time on Saturday. It didn't even last all the way through Saturday night, because I started thinking about Sunday, and Sunday was kind of a lost cause, because when you go to bed on Sunday night, you wake up and it's Monday morning. So I think a big misconception that people have, especially surrounding happiness, is that happiness is a result, an outcome of something else that happens. Something happens and it either makes you happy or it makes you sad. And while it's true that things that happen have an impact on what your happiness is, right? Whether it makes you a little bit happier or a little bit sadder, happiness actually determines the outcomes in your life. And what's really cool, I know that sounds a little bit voodoo, a little bit, hocus pocus magic type stuff. And, if you're even familiar with the law of attraction, it may even sound a little bit like that. And, I'll be the first person to admit I buy into the law of attraction. I do. Lock, stock, and barrel, I'm all in. However, I think that there are very few people on this planet that have the mental capacity to really harness the law of attraction. And you know what? Unfortunately, I'm not one of them. I've been able to do some things, but I'm still working on it. It doesn't come naturally to me. If you think about it, most people probably can't even meditate for 5 minutes without their mind wandering off. So, we lack that mental focus and that mental fortitude that's necessary to harness something like the law of attraction, which is why I think a movie like The Secret was good in the sense that it really it brought the law of attraction to light for a lot of people, but it was dangerous because it made them think that they could just, think something and it would automatically happen. And it's a lot more difficult than that. The other downside to the law of attraction is that unless you've had experiences with it yourself, you're really, the only proof that you've got is that you're choosing to believe other people's stories. There isn't a lot of scientific backing behind, what happens with the law of attraction. So, with that disclaimer in place, yes, I believe in the law of attraction, but what I'm going to share with you now is not the law of attraction. It absolutely isn't. And the information that I'm going to share with you, this secret, for lack of a better word, is there's some scientific backing behind it. And I think that's what I really like about this. And it's something simple because it is happiness. Now, if you're sitting there going, well, great, you know what? I'm a happy person. Well, great, I'm thrilled for you. But you know what? A lot of us aren't or weren't. And if you're sitting there going, gosh, what am I going to do? Well, here's one of the really cool things is that you can change. And in some upcoming videos, I'm going to give you some exercises that you can do starting immediately to help yourself change. And a depressed person can become a happy person. A pessimist can become an optimist. Somebody who's struggling with anxiety and depression can get through that and can become happy. And it doesn't need to be this long, drawn-out process. And when I'm talking about changing, I'm not just talking about changing the way that you think. I'm talking about your brain actually physically changing. Right? It's something called neuroplasticity. Our brains are malleable. They can physically change. And if you're familiar with the term neuroplasticity, it probably has a lot to do with the fact that there's an app for that, right? If you're familiar with the app Lumosity, that's what it's based on. It's based on the neuroscience and the fact that your brain can change. We can exercise our brain. And one of the things that we can do is we can condition our brain to allow us to be happy, to become happier faster, to become happier longer, and to just be happier in general. So if you're one of those people who is struggling, who isn't what I would call inherently a happy person, don't worry, there's hope. Because like I said, in some upcoming videos, I'm going to share with you some exercises, some simple exercises that can be done that will enable you to start moving into that realm of happiness. So, bear with us, hang in there, and we will get you. I'm going to try my best to help get you there. But what you need to know about happiness is it impacts your health. Along with your health, it impacts your longevity, impacts your decision-making abilities, increases your creativity, your vision, and it also helps determine the level of financial success that you can have. Now, I told you that there's some scientific backing behind this. So let me tell you first and foremost how we know that your brains are malleable, that they can change. Well, a study was done years ago on an unlikely group of subjects. London cab drivers, of all things. Now, if you're familiar with London at all, you know that their streets are not like many of the streets that we have, streets in the cities that we have here in the United States, and even in cities abroad, where they're built on a grid system, where it's straight down and straight across. It looks almost like a checkerboard, where if you miss a turn, you go up a block or two and you make a couple turns, and barring some traffic, you can be back where you were in a matter of minutes. Well, London's not quite like that. London it's like a labyrinth or a maze. It kind of looks like somebody dropped some spaghetti on a plate and said, okay, that's how our roads are going to go. So if you miss a turn, it could take you a half hour, 40 minutes to get back to where you need to be. And London cab drivers, it's not like they can plan ahead. They have absolutely no way to know where somebody is going to ask them to go. So they need to have an extraordinary ability to recall on all the roads, all the information, all the maps that they've got stored in their memory. And there's a part of the brain called the hippocampus. And the hippocampus, in this instance, I'm sure it may have other functions. I'm not a medical professional, but I know in this instance, it helps with the transfer of information between long-term and short-term memory, making it easier for the brain to process and to call on that information. I guess if we're using a real loose analogy to something that we can all relate to, the computer today, your hippocampus is kind of like RAM, allowing information to go from the hard drive and be readily available for the processor. So what they found on these London cab drivers was that London cab drivers have larger hippocampi than everybody else. So this meant one of two things. It meant A, that these people were all born with an extraordinarily large hippocampus and thus were kind of predestined to become London cab drivers, or B, their brains changed to allow them to do and perform the tasks that they needed to perform in order to be able to do the job that they had to do. Now, I don't know about you, but personally, I don't believe that anybody was predestined to become a London cab driver. So that's just one of many scientific studies that have been done that prove the fact that neuroplasticity is a real and physical component. So how do we know that happiness impacts your health? Well, according to statistics, happy employees call out of work less than, or let's say they call out of work 15 days less a year than unhappy employees. Now, you may be sitting there going, well, Brian, that's great, but it doesn't really tell me anything about the people's health. Maybe they're not sick, maybe they're just sick of their job. And I get that, because I'm going to guess that there are probably a lot of you who are watching this that were a lot like me, where when I got sick when I was in a corporate job, I dragged my ass to work because I was miserable anyway. And why waste a good sick day if I was miserable? Why not bank it, save it up so I could call out, play hooky, and do something fun, maybe go down to the beach? So that study I'm not totally on board with, because I think a lot of people are probably just more sick of their job than they are just physically sick. So what's another way that they tested to find out that happiness impacts health? And I think logically you're probably thinking it does make sense, right? Because if you're happier, you're probably dealing with less stress and anxiety, and I think most of us understand what a nasty physical impact stress and anxiety has on us. But how do we prove that? How do we prove that your happiness level can impact how healthy you are? Well, they did a study on this group of people. And what they did was they gave all these people a questionnaire. And based on the responses that they gave, they classified them into three different groups. They said, hey, group A, you're a positive group. You're inherently positive, happy people. Group B, you're kind of neutral. And group C, you're the sad and depressed group. And then what they did, and this is a study that I wouldn't ever do, but they took a cold virus and they injected each and every person in this panel. And they made them sick. They made all of these people sick. They gave them a cold virus. And a week later, they had doctors evaluate, give them physical evaluations. And what they found was that the positive group fought off that virus more efficiently. They had less symptoms. They were less sick. They were healthier than the other two groups. Their immune systems were working more efficiently than those other two groups. And the only difference in those groups was whether they were considered happy people, neutral, or sad people. Now, of course, if your health is benefiting from being happy, odds are your longevity will too, right? The length of time that you're going to live. But how long, how significant an impact is there going to be? Well, interestingly enough, about 10 years. And I don't know about you, but I think that 10 years is pretty darn significant. And how do they know this? Well, they did another study on what I would consider another group of unlikely test subjects, Catholic nuns. And they studied these nuns, and they studied them from around their 20s. And in their 20s, they evaluated some writings that they did and classified the nuns into groups. Again, a positive and happy group, a neutral group, and a negative or sad group. And they evaluated these nuns over decades. And what they found was that the group of positive nuns outlived their counterparts on average by about 10 years. I've got a bee flying around, so if I freak out, I apologize. But the positive nuns outlived their counterparts by about 10 years on average. But here's what's really cool. At age 85, 90% of that positive group was still alive versus only 34% of the group that was classified as sad and unhappy. 90% versus 34%. That is a huge difference. So if you don't think that the level of happiness that you have going on in your life has an impact on not just your immediate health, but your long-term health, it absolutely does. It absolutely does. So, we know that it impacts your health and your longevity, but how does it impact your decision making? Well, I love this study. This is a really cool study because they took a group of doctors and they wanted to see how quickly this group of doctors could come to an accurate diagnosis of patients. And they took this group of doctors and they split the group of doctors up into 3 subgroups. They said Group A, Group B, and Group C. And to Group A, they said, we're going to put Group A in a positive mood, and then we're going to ask them to perform the tasks. Group B, we're going to give them some information, but it's going to be neutral information. It's not going to be information that's going to impact their happiness. And Group C is just going to get instruction on what they need to do. See, the reason why I like this study is because they didn't evaluate whether the doctors were inherently happy or sad people. All they did was they took the doctors and split them up and they said, we're going to make this one group happy. And the group that they made happy arrived at an accurate diagnosis 19% faster than the other 2 groups. Now, I don't know about you, but if I'm going to a hospital and I'm being evaluated, I want the happy doctor who's going to diagnose me correctly, get me on my way to health 20% faster. To me, that sounds like life or death, or at least it could be. But here's what's really cool. You want to know how they made that group of doctors happy? They gave them a lollipop. They gave them a lollipop and they didn't even let them have it because they didn't want the sugar to impact their decision-making ability. They said, hey doc, here's a lollipop, but do me a favor and don't eat it. Wait until you're done. And that act alone made that group of doctors perform that much more efficiently. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm starting to think that I'm going to carry around a bag of lollipops with me just in case something happens. And, rather than doctors giving kids lollipops at the end of an exam, I'm going to start giving doctors lollipops as we go in. But it's not just doctors and their abilities to make decisions. They studied it with kids also, 4-year-olds even. They took a group of 4-year-olds and they split them into 2 groups. And all they wanted them to do was to perform certain activities with groups of blocks, testing their cognitive abilities. And Group A, they said, hey, you know what? Before you do this, I want you to stop for a minute and think about something that happened this morning that made you smile or made you laugh. And they didn't tell them what they had to think about. They said, just think of something. For all we know, it could have been, some kid might have farted on the bus and it made him laugh. Who knows what it was that made him happy? They just said, hey, think about something that made you laugh this morning and then go and do this. And the other group, they just said, hey, go and perform these tasks. You know where I'm going, right? The group that they had focus on something that made them positive, something that put them in a positive mood, significantly outperformed the other group. So if you're out there, if you're a parent, or even if you're a student, if you've got something to do, if you're heading into a task that you need to be on your game, just take a minute or 2 and think of something that puts you in a good mood. Think of something that makes you positive. It's going to make you that much more efficient, that much more effective. Now, I know in the beginning of this, I highlighted some other things that happiness assists with. And I'm going to get to that in my next video, but I've got to run. My kids are just about ready to get off the bus. I've got to go run out front and grab them and enjoy the day a little bit. So make it a great day. You absolutely deserve it. I look forward to seeing you soon. Take care now.